Hi, I'm back. Jen here with another Books and Looks video. I do have another book to talk about today as opposed to last week. If you keep watch with all my videos, you see that last week was just a makeup video because I hadn't finished reading any books recently. But I did just finish a book the last couple of days, and it was Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I don't know how familiar you are with it. Have you read it? Let me know in the comments below. If you were supposed to read it, put that in the comments below too, because there's a lot of irony in that concept right there. I don't have a whole lot to say about the plot of this book. It has a pretty basic plot, not real in depth, but the themes and the messages of the book really dig deep and really make me think. So that's probably what I'm going to focus on more today. So hopefully you like some philosophical stuff, because that's probably where I'm going to go today. I'm going to actually my look today, inspired by fire. So I'm going to use like reds and golds, and it doesn't match my shirt at all today. I mean, reds and golds, whatever, who cares? Oh, that's lovely. This little thing here, whatever. I'm gonna use reds and golds today. Okay, I gotta fix that. So it's, connected to the concept of the story Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. If you're unfamiliar, this story actually was written in the 1950s, like 51, 53, somewhere around there. And it takes place 50 years in that future. So it's supposed to be in like the late 1990s that this story takes place. However, in the 90s, the book was revised and republished to be pushed ahead another several decades. So actually, the version that I read was published in like 06, 08, something like that. And it references, instead of in the original book when it references like the 1990s, this version that I read references the 1920s. So it's kind of cool that, it's a future dystopian novel, and as time passes, they have to keep making revisions to the book to accommodate the concept of when is the future. So I just think that's a nice little interesting tidbit. But basically, as I said, the story is a future dystopian novel, and it is about this society, this world where everybody is in a world where books have become, I guess they are illegal. Books are illegal, but they didn't become illegal because the government said so. It just kind of happened slowly, and the people wanted the books to become illegal and not be a thing anymore. But I'll get into that. The plot of the book, before I get into all the themes and messages and whatnot, the plot of the book is about a man named Guy Montag, but nobody ever really calls him Guy. Everybody just refers to him as Montag. And he is a fireman. And in this future dystopian novel, future dystopian society, the firemen don't go put out fires and save people. The fireman's job is to go after the people in the world who have books and burn the books and the structure that they are being stored in. So Montag's job is a fireman in one area of the city, an unnamed American city. And his job is, when people call in, hey, there's books at such and such an address, his job with his team is to go out, get this house. The residents of that location are all arrested, and then they burn down the house and all the books inside. They go in and they find the books and they burn everything, burn the whole thing down. So interesting dystopian future, right? Well, so Montag, in the beginning of the story, he is burning somebody's house, and he's just talking about like how much he loves his job, and he feels like he has such an important job of like keeping the peace and helping people stay happy, and like, he's an important part of their society, blah 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 blah. But then on his walk home, he just is in the middle of the night, because he has like the night shift. Like the firefighters always work at night, so it's walking home at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's walking down his street towards his house, And he runs into Clarice, who's his next door neighbor. She's a teenager. She's like 16 years old, and she's considered antisocial and weird. And the reason she's considered antisocial and weird, you find out in their first conversation, is she, unlike everybody else in this world, she likes to talk to people and like have conversations and be philosophical and think and wonder. And like, you know, the one point she's like, you ever looked at the moon? And isn't it just really cool looking? And like, how did it get there? And does anybody even know? And she's like asking these questions and bringing up these ideas. And Montag's like, you're crazy. What in the world are you talking about? Like, it's the moon. But she mentions to him, she's like, well, you're very different. And he's like, what do you mean I'm different? And she replies, well, you're different because like whenever I said something about the moon, you actually looked up at the moon and thought about what I said and responded with something that was related to the moon. She's like, normally whenever I say something to people and ask them questions about the moon, they look at me like I'm crazy and just walk away. You actually answered me. So their conversation kind of goes like that. And then at the very end of the conversation, right when they get to their houses, she's like, all right, well, I'm going to go home. You can see my family sitting over there and, you know, in the living room window. They're sitting around talking. We really like to just sit and talk, and I'm going to get back to them. And he's like, what do you talk about? And she's like, I don't know, whatever we feel like. And he's really weirded out by it. He's like, that's strange, but okay. And then as she walks away, she says to him, oh, one quick question. Are you happy? And he's like, what kind of question is that? She's like, I just want to know, are you happy? And he's like, of course I'm happy. What are you talking about? Like, whatever, just go home. I gotta go home. So then he's like thinking in his brain, oh my gosh, am I happy? Why did she ask me that? And that was a really weird encounter. And from that point forward, he's like now starting to think and wonder like about the world and all the things she said about like talking to people and looking around and experiencing the world and how people think she's weird and antisocial and whatnot. They have multiple conversations like every day on his way home from work. She's outside taking a stroll just because she likes to be outside and look at nature, which is considered very strange in this society. And so they have multiple conversations. And at one point, she asks him, like, oh, hey, have you ever heard of the thing where if you put a buttercup under your chin, if your chin turns yellow, it means you're in love? And he's like, that's stupid. And she does it, and her chin turns yellow. So he's like, oh my gosh, she's right. But when he does it, it doesn't turn yellow. So he's like, all these little things like start to infiltrate his thought process, and he's starting to wonder about everything. He starts to question everything little by little. And so anyway, he gets home one early morning after his shift, and his wife Mildred is in bed. So he doesn't turn the light on. He just comes in and like starts getting ready for bed, and he kicks with his foot her empty pill bottle. So she takes sleeping pills, prescription sleeping pills, and he like kicks it and realizes, oh my gosh, the pill bottle is empty. Like, she just refilled it a couple of days ago. Why is it empty? And he realizes, oh my gosh, she overdosed. So he calls like the 911 situation, and the people show up to do something, like to pump her stomach. But what's really weird about this situation, first of all, he's freaking out because his wife OD'd, and he's like, is she going to survive? Blah, blah, blah. But the people who come to do the stomach pumping aren't even doctors. They actually are just like random guys that are hired to do this job because it's so common in this world that they're just like, they just come around and just drive around, and people call that there was an OD, and they go and they pump the stomachs and they leave again and they send a bill. So they pump her stomach, and the next morning she's like, I don't remember anything about last night. What happened? She's like, my stomach hurts, but I feel so hungry, and like I have an awful headache. And she's like, did we have a party and I drank too much? And Montag just kind of goes along with it, and he's like, yeah. And then he's like, hey, what happened to your pills? Like, all your pills are missing. Do you know what happened? And she's like, I don't know. That's strange. He's like, would you have taken them all and, maybe, overdose? And she said, oh, no, I would never do something like that. I'm very careful with that stuff. I would never. And so she basically is living in denial, and she denies the whole thing, doesn't remember it. Does she really not remember it, or is she just pushing it aside? I don't know. So that happens. And then the next day he goes to work, and he gets called to another fire. And this one has like way more books than any they've ever seen before. So Montag's kind of weirded out, like, wow, why does she have so many books? That's weird. But he does his job and he starts, putting kerosene everywhere so that they can light it on fire. Well, the woman refuses to leave the house. Normally the cops come first and remove the people from the house, but they didn't this time for some reason. So the old woman who owns the house and collected all the books is still there, and she refuses to leave the house. So his boss, Captain Beatty, is like, let her go. She doesn't want to leave. She doesn't want to leave. Like, whatever, that's her problem. So she is like, basically saying like, I'm not leaving, so do what you got to do. Like, this is my choice. And so she ends up getting killed in the fire that they burn the books down, and it really disturbs Montag. And also, along those same lines, while he's there, because of all these like thoughts from Clarice and questioning ideas that he's been thinking about over the last few days, week or so, he grabs one of her books and like shoves it in his coat real quick, which, remember, owning books is illegal. So the fireman, he like takes it and shoves it in his book and steals it. And then they burn down the house. The lady dies with it. And Montag's like super disturbed, right? Obviously, for obvious reasons. Excuse me. He's super disturbed about what he witnesses and her dying. And also the fact that he like stole a book. He's really freaked out. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. But then the reader goes and sees him go home. He goes home with the book, and then he puts it in the like the vent, like, like in the wall, like there's, or in the ceiling or the floor, wherever it is in your house. He opens up the vent and he sticks it in there, and then you find out that he actually has a bunch of books, that he's actually been stealing books for quite some time. So like, that's a huge deal. Like, we find out that he's actually been doing this for a long time, and that implies that like what Clarice was saying to him recently, like, that wasn't the start of it. He had been questioning things and stealing books for a while. So like, it's a whole thing now. Well, moving forward in the story, that thing with the woman in the house dying with her books really freaks him out. So he is like, literally gets physically ill, and he calls off work the next day. And so Beatty, his boss, Captain Beatty, shows up at his house because Beatty's like, this is less than 24 hours after this whole lady died in the house. That's probably what this is related to. So, he shows up at his house like the next morning and it's like, hey, I heard you called in sick for tonight. What's going on? Is it this lady? And he's like, I just really don't feel well. I need to take a day off. And he's never taken a day off of work in 10 years working at as a fireman. So that's a whole thing. And Beatty's like, you know what? This happens to everybody. All firemen get, question things and start to wonder, what is this all about? What are we doing? And you are allowed to have one book one time for 24 hours, but you have to burn it at that point, or we're going to come to your house and burn it down. Like, you get one freebie as a fireman. So Montag's like, okay. And he's also worried because he has way more than one book, and he's had them for way more than 24 hours. And then also in this Beatty gives this big long monologue where he's talking about like why the society is the way it is, and how like it's important to get rid of books, and books actually create animosity and discord, and how like people who get offended by books. Okay, I'm getting into the themes here. So I said I was going to say that for later after I get through the plot, but whatever. So Beatty starts talking about like, books make people uncomfortable, and they offend people, and there's books that are inappropriate, and books that are like, disregarding other people, and or like this one says this and then that one says that, so what's right, what's wrong? It's just nothing but a confusing mess, and offensive, and just like, books are awful. Like, they just create animosity and problems in the world, so we're gonna get rid of them, right? And Montag's like, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then you find out that this has been happening for like years and years. Like, we're decades into this society and the books being banned. And he goes on to say that, like, over the years, like, people don't want to read books. Like, they're boring. They're not as fun as all of the amazing, entertainment, like sports and activities and like skydiving and racing cars, and like that's way more fun. That's what people want to do. So like let's just, instead of making people read books that number one are boring and number two cause offensive feelings and disagreements, let's just get rid of the books and fill our worlds with fun. And then Mildred kind of is in the scene too, and she's talking about how the TV shows that she watches all the freaking time. She's like, yeah, I love these shows. They're like my family. She never mentions any other family except her TV family. And she's like, oh yeah, I just love it. They're so funny and so entertaining, and the stories are so good. And then Montag at one point, at a different scene in the story, actually asks her, like, what's going on in the story? Like, you know, tell me what's the plot. And she's like, well, that person's mad at that person. And he's like, well, why? Like, what are they angry about? And she's like, well, just watch it. And then there's like a little snippet of the show, and it's literally just like circular reasoning, like, I'm angry. Why are you angry? Well, I'm angry. I'm angry too. And there's like zero plot, zero substance in the story at all. So Montag realizes that like there's nothing anywhere. Like everything is just stupid and meaningless. And he feels like there's something missing in his life, and he's feeling confused and lonely. Everything that Beatty says the books cause, he's like, I feel this way. I feel confused. I feel offended in some weird way, and I feel angry, and like I'm not reading books. So why am I feeling this way? If books are the problem and we don't have any books and I've never read a book, like this is what's going on in his head, then what's happening? Like why is everything so awful? And like going back to when Mildred OD'd and those guys came and pumped her stomach, they were in a hurry because they were like, we have like 8 other cases we have to get to tonight. So like, we got to hurry up and get this done. Here's your bill. So like, there's people everywhere that are ODing. And in one of the conversations he has with Clarice mentions how just this school year alone, she's had like 15 schoolmates who have died from gunshots, violence, or car accidents. And like, it's just all these little things are telling us that this world, this dystopian world where books are not allowed and all books are banned, everybody's really unhappy and nobody has any understanding of why. So basically what this book is saying is like, books give us a connection to humanity, and books let us experience things that we wouldn't ordinarily experience, right? I hope this is all making sense. I feel like I'm all over the place, but there's just so much that this book has to say about the world and like all of the, you know, like the importance of literature and the importance of interacting with other human beings and the importance of compassion and the importance of understanding other people and not just being lost in your technology. And another thing, speaking of technology, everybody wears these little seashells. Now remember, this was written in the 1950s. So everybody in this dystopian world wears these things called seashells. And basically they're ear pods, little things that they keep in their ear that are like radios that can constantly play radio, music, commercials, talk radio, just constant stuff in their ear. And then with Mildred and many other people, they also have the TVs on all the time. And in this story, the TVs aren't just TVs as we know them. They are not like big screen TVs. They're whole wall TVs. She calls them the parlor walls because like parlor as in like, you know, sitting room. But she says that 3 out of 4 walls are the TV, the parlor walls. And she wants the 4th wall because she doesn't know like only 3 walls. Like I only have 3 walls of TV. I want all 4 walls to be the TV. Which makes me think of VR because you're completely immersed and it's like, how much of a bigger screen can you get whenever it's like your entire visual space, right? So like she wants to basically live permanently in VR. And she's like all sad and stupid and lonely. She OD'd, all of that. So like this book is basically talking about how like in a world without books and a complete obsession with technology and distraction of life through technology is basically causing the demise of all mental health, all camaraderie, all human interaction. And like Clarice being considered a weirdo for wanting to talk to other people and get to know them. Yeah, like she's the weirdo in this story. And actually she ends up getting killed when he comes home from the fire where the lady died with the fire. Mildred tells him, he's like, I haven't seen Clarice in like a couple of days. Do you know who I'm talking about? Our next door neighbor, that little girl. And Mildred's like, oh, Clarice died in a car accident, like, I don't know, a few days ago. He's like, what? Why didn't you tell me? She's like, I didn't care. I was like, whatever, whoever she is, she died, whatever. She's dead. So why would I talk about her anymore? Which is like another hint of like how disconnected they are with other human beings. So, okay, so I have so much more to say and I've already talked 20 minutes. I'm so sorry. So, moving along in the story, Montag is like, okay, I gotta do something. I can't just sit around. This is all messed up. So he remembers a year ago, he met with this guy named Faber. He didn't know his name. Well, yeah, he didn't know. He did find his name. And the Faber was like reciting poetry to him, and he didn't really realize it at the time, but he wrote down the guy's name and number. And now in this moment, he's like, oh my gosh, like I'm having an existential crisis, basically. And so he is like, I'm going to go to Faber's house and I'm going to talk to him because he knows stuff. And so he goes to Faber's house and knocks on the door, and Faber's like, you're a fireman. I'm not letting you in. You're going to like kill me. And Montag's like, no, seriously, I promise. And he pulls out a book from his coat, like as a, like, I come in peace, essentially. And so Faber lets him in. It turns out he has the Bible, and he thinks it might be the last copy of the Bible. It's not. There's hidden books all over the city, but Montag, not really understanding what's happening in the world, he's like, I think this might be the last Bible. And he's like, Faber, I need your help. Like, I can't live this way. I need to do something to change the world. And Faber's like, I'm nothing but a big coward. Like, I just hide here in my house and, like, I'm waiting for my death. But Montag's like, I cannot do this myself and I can't do nothing. Please tell me what to do. So Faber's like, all right. Here's some ideas I have. He's kind of like a tinkerer. So he's like, I have this little seashell radio, but it's actually two-way. It picks up your voice and transmits it to me, and it picks up my voice and transmits it to you. Like a modern day comm. And so he's like, you take this and you go to work tonight, and I want to eavesdrop and like listen and hear what Captain Beatty says. Maybe we can like catch him in something and, you know, get him that way. And then, you know, what else we can do is we can plant books in all the firemen's houses, and then maybe that will plant some or like inspire some question and like suspicion about the world to everybody. If they're like, oh my gosh, Captain Beatty said this, or the firemen have books, like what the heck? And then maybe it'll like incite a riot. So that's their plan. They're going to plant books, and then they're going to try to catch Beatty in something and use it against him. So Montag goes to work, and Beatty's like being all weird and like saying stuff that's really weird and freaky. And he keeps like quoting Shakespeare and like Alexander Pope and like Thomas Jefferson and like all these historical greats. He's quoting them. Now we as the reader recognize these quotes, but Montag doesn't understand any of it. He's like getting all frazzled and confused. He doesn't understand what Beatty is saying. So, but Faber does, because Faber, by the way, is a retired English professor, but they did away with all literature courses, obviously. So he has been retired for like 40 years and just like living his life, hoping that things change, but not doing anything. So Montag goes to work, and Beatty is saying, his captain is saying all this weird stuff. And Faber's like, oh man, he's smart. Like he's going to be a formidable foe. And like, so Faber and Montag are like, okay, we're going to have to figure something out. But in the last moments of that chapter, they get a fire call. And Captain Beatty like looks at, this is 1950s when it was written, so he looks at the telegram that says where the fire is. And he's like, all right, let's go. Let's get in the truck. We have to go. We've got some books we have to go light on fire. So they all pile in the fire truck. And where do they go? Montag's house. Did you see that coming? I mean, maybe. Like, we knew he had books hidden in his house. Oh, and then also, right before he went to work, this is important. Right before he went to work, Mildred had some friends over, and Beatty, after he headed over to Faber's, he came home. He has the earpiece in his ear. He goes home because he has to pick up his book to take it back to work with him. And Mildred had friends there. And he randomly picks up not the one that was hidden not the Bible that was hidden in his coat, but a different book. And he starts reading poetry to these women straight from a book. So the women are all freaked out. Like the one starts crying. The one like freaks out and like screams at him about how horrible of a person he is and storm out. So when he gets to work, they get a fire call. And I mean, I guess you could see it coming. Somebody called on Montag, and now they have to go to Montag's house. And Captain Beatty's like, It's your house. It's your problem. Burn it down. So Montag has to burn down his own house, which he does. But here's the thing. He now has a flamethrower in his hands, okay? And Beatty is like egging him on and like taunting him and stuff. And then he notices that Montag has the thing in his ear where he's talking to Mr. Faber. And Beatty's like, oh, what's that? We can trace that and figure out who you're talking to, and we'll go take care of them. So that like triggers Montag because Faber's like his only friend, the only confidant, his partner in crime, so to speak. So he loses it, and he freaking lights Beatty on fire, shoots him with the flamethrower that is meant to burn houses down. And he shoots it on Beatty and lights Beatty on fire. So Beatty's dead. Now Montag's a murderer. But now he's on the run. And also in this dystopian world, they have a thing called the Hound, which is like a weird robot thing that tracks people down by their chemical makeup. And Beatty set it to track Montag. So right after he kills Beatty, the Hound comes around the corner and goes to attack him. And like what the Hound does is it shoots or like injects the person with kind of like a lethal dose of morphine, and so it kills them. And that's literally what the Hound does. It hunts down people and then injects them with morphine to kill them. But since Montag has his flamethrower, when the Hound starts coming at him, he shoots it with the flamethrower, but not early enough. He still gets shot a little bit, but only enough to numb his leg briefly. So, I mean, cool, but it ends up slowly fading, and then it's like not even important to the story anymore. So he killed that Hound, but then they send a new Hound. He ends up listening to the news through his seashell, because remember the earpiece is gone. So he puts his seashell back in, and he hears the news that they have another Hound. They're like the whole city, all the cops, everything are all hunting Montag. They're all chasing after him. So he doesn't know what to do. He's running. A couple of little sidebar things happen while he's running, but he goes to Faber's house, and Faber gives him like his clothes so that it like changes his scent. He's like, wear my clothes, go to the river, jump in the river to try to like wash off your scent, and then put on my clothes to like, throw off the Hound. And so that's the plan. And Faber's like, okay, I bought bus tickets. I'm out of here. I'm leaving. So meet me. I think he says like, meet me in, I forget, San Francisco. I don't know, somewhere. He's like, meet me in San Francisco. We're going to re-up or whatever. So they do that. That's the plan. So Montag runs off. He gets in the river. He washes off. And then he actually pause. I'm getting ahead of myself. So he gets in the river and he goes way down the river. He got rid of his clothes. He's wearing Faber's clothes. He's washed off through the river. And then down a couple of miles down the river, he gets out and he starts following these really, really old rusted out train tracks. And eventually he comes to a group of men who are standing around a fire. And they're wearing jeans and like blazers. And they're like, hey, Montag, we've been expecting you. So Montag is like, what? And they have a little TV that they've been watching the whole thing. So he goes up to them and they're like, Faber? And he's like, yeah, he told me you would be out here somewhere and I was hopeful that I would find you. So he found them and they're like, cool. Well, it's really nice to meet you. You're welcome with us. We are old, like retired professors. We are, and then they say like, we all have memorized a book. And he's like, wow, that seems really hard. You're like, well, if you read a book one time, it's in your memory, and we have developed ways of like bringing that out of your memory. And what we're going to do is we're just like kind of laying low and hiding out. And when all of this dystopian world kind of fizzles away, we're going to reprint all the books and bring them back. Like I am, Frankenstein. Not really. I don't remember what books they are. I've been like this man over here, he's the blah, blah book, and he's that book, and he's that book. And if you go to like, I don't know, Chicago, you'll find these books. And so basically there's like people everywhere who have memorized books with the plan of one day reprinting all of them. And I think that's amazing. I love it. So I think that's a really cool idea. So that's that. We're almost to the end. And then they hear in their radio / on the news that the war has started. There's all been like little rumblings through the whole story about the war. Like the girls that were at Mildred's house were talking about how their husbands were just called to serve in the war. And like there's another mention on this radio station. It comes up on the TV. But now war has started. And then as this jet comes flying by and drops an atomic bomb on the city, and they all are standing several miles away watching an atomic bomb fall on the city, and the city being completely decimated and flattened. And so, like, everybody's dead. Hopefully Faber got out in time. We don't know. But assuming everybody else in the town has been killed. That's essentially how the story ends. Like, the city is decimated. Montag is with these guys, and they're just gonna like live their lives as like homeless people surviving on the fringes of society. They're gonna go to like another city and try to find more people and just like be the books in their head, and hopefully one day be able to bring them back. But they're not gonna actually do anything. They're just gonna sit back and wait for like the pendulum to swing the other way. So that's basically the plot of the story. And I mentioned some of the thematic concepts as I was talking, but like, it blows my mind because this man wrote this book in the 1950s before there were like AirPods, mobile phones, like, personal device phones, before there were big screen TVs, before VR was invented, before most of this stuff, like portable TVs didn't even exist in the 50s. So like the fact that he created all of these things in his head, and then here we are in 2023 with these things, and these things are actually doing what he said they would in the story. Like, people are walking around with earpods in all the time, completely oblivious to the world around them and not interacting with other human beings. Like, that's happening. The stuff that he was saying was like the dystopian world of Fahrenheit 451. Like, this was like, in his mind, the worst possible scenario for America. Like, that's where we are. This stuff is happening. And it blows my mind that this is the world we live in. And it scares the crap out of me. But I still love the book. I will say, Ray Bradbury's writing style is irritating. He's way too flowery and super heavy with the metaphors. Like, he describes Clarice as having a moon face and like milky skin. And like, sure, okay, I get it, but he does that like 7 times. He describes her milky moon face and her milky moon skin. And it's like, And just everything. Like when Montag is in like his existential crisis and he's thinking about all these things, it's kind of like he's writing in a stream of consciousness to show what is going through Montag's head. And like, sure, I get it. It's kind of all over the place. And it's kind of like going from one thing to the next and jumping around, very much like a real thought process would. But when you're reading it, it's disconcerting, it's confusing, it's weird, and it I don't know, it's a bit of a turnoff. I've had multiple people tell me that like while they love the story and love the concepts, Ray Bradbury's flowery language and excessive use of metaphors really just messes it up. Is this the side? Is this the side? Okay. It kind of takes away from the thematic concepts that he's trying to talk about. And if he would have written it in a more focused on the plot or more character driven, it would have had a lot more power. So, okay, I don't disagree with that. But again, it was the 1950s. He was writing to who he was writing to, right? So, my makeup look is done. I could talk about this book for another half an hour, but I have already spoken for over 30 minutes, and I'm sure y'all are probably like, this video is too long. So I'm going to go ahead and let it go. I would love for you to put some comments below if you have read this book, or if you have any thoughts on like the concepts that I brought up with like technology and the lack of human interaction and how it's like a detriment to our mental health and how it's leading to violence and it's leading to loneliness and it's leading to all this negativity, and there's so much more in the book I want to talk about. So much in my head. But anyway, this video is already too long, so I'm going to get going. But please make comments below. I would love to have a text conversation with you below about what your thoughts are. And I hope you like my fire-themed look. I think it turned out pretty great. I kind of love it. I was going to wear a purple shirt today, but clearly I have to change into something else because my eyes are fire. You like what I did there? Cool. All right. Have a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed hearing me ramble on about this powerful book, and I also hope you enjoyed my makeup look today. And I hope you have a fantastic day. It is a beautiful day where I am, and I'm gonna go hang out with my sister this evening. So looking forward to it. But as always, I hope you stay beautiful inside and out. Bye.